Hello, Blitz fans of all ages, it's me, Plumcastle here, and this is the Cromwell B. Now, the Cromwell B is, of course, a lot like the Tech Tree Cromwell, except it's got a lot of gun depression. When I say a lot, I really do mean a fair amount. On average, a decent amount of gun depression would probably be considered maybe 8 to 10 degrees is probably considered pretty good, but this tank has 13. Yes, that is a ton, and I do mean a ton of gun depression, and when you play this tank, you really do feel it. Ridge, I mean, even if it's just a fairly steep ridge, you can usually get your gun over the top of it and down looking at the enemy quite easily, and you will see this from time to time during these replays. Now, I do want to talk about the armor a little bit. Now, of course, it's a medium. You can't really expect it to have much armor at all, but there are some interesting points that I should definitely note here. Of course, the back and the side can be HE'd even by another Cromwell, so you've got pretty weak sides and rear when it comes to that. Pretty expected. And of course, your front is, I mean, it's got pretty typical medium armor. It's not super thick, and it's not always HEable for most tanks, with the exception of course, KV2s and stuff like that. But the troll points I want to note are actually around its turret. So its turret is, of course, very, very flat, and you're going to be able to get penned basically all the time in it, even by HE sometimes if there is a KV2, like I said. But the sides of the turret are where this turret actually really becomes quite interesting, because if you can see from the top here, it is super angled. So even though when it's directly on the side, it's only about 60 or so degrees, when you actually angle this up at its steepest, it becomes ridiculously thick, sometimes reaching up to like 700 millimeters effective, though on average somewhere around 500, I'd say. And you would think that because the face is so flat, you would never really get hit anywhere else but your face, but oddly enough, I frequently get bounces off of particularly that top angled plate there. Just if your tank is inaccurate and you shoot at these, or an enemy shoots at you and they didn't aim properly, it can actually bounce, which is honestly kind of surprising given how flat the turret is. You really would think it would be more vulnerable than it sometimes is. But anyway, moving off of the armor, now let's look at the statistics of the tank itself. Now, of course, these will be the statistics without any kind of provisions or equipment, though if you do so choose, you can definitely put those on, and it'll make the Cromwell B just so much better. So firstly, when it comes to hit points, we've got a base hit point pool of 960, which, while it's not the top, is not the least either. It's sitting a little bit above average for a tier 6 medium, which is of course really nice. Now, you've actually got the best view range for a tier 6 medium, sitting at 250 meters, really just allowing you to get some of those earlier spots in a game, even if, say, you aren't able to see as far as maybe a light tank would. But anyway, moving on to the gun, we've got a lot of interesting stuff here. So your base damage per minute for AP rounds is sitting at 1,757, which is actually very, very good for a tier 6 medium. Your penetration isn't the highest, but it's definitely not bad by any means. You've got 145 millimeters, which is definitely enough to get the job done. And of course, you also have a nice 160 alpha, which is pretty decent as well. Now, the shell velocity is where the gun is a little bit less amazing, I would say. The shell velocity is sitting at a pretty low 785 meters a second, which means that your shells are a little bit sluggish, and you, at least for me, I do definitely feel this. Now, when it comes to your APCR rounds, things are a little bit different. So for your damage per minute, of course, it's a little bit less, but it's still sitting at a very nice 1,482. And your penetration actually gets boosted up to 202 millimeters. And that right there is actually going to be able to allow you to penetrate a lot of tanks, even some heavies, maybe even higher tier heavies, pretty reliably. Your damage is still sitting at a nice 135 for the APCR rounds. And your shell velocity, again, while it's not fantastic, it's still at least a little bit faster, sitting at 981, which is just a little bit lower than 1,000. So yeah, that is definitely quicker. Now, when it comes to the aiming itself, you've got a base aim time of, let's just say 2 seconds. It's 2.01, but it's, for all intents and purposes, a 2-second base aim time, which is actually very good as well. Dispersion is a little bit less fantastic. It's not terrible or bad even. It's still above the middle, but it's sitting at 0.345. So some shots may not go quite where you're expecting, but still in general pretty good. Now, of course, the selling point for the Cromwell B, at least for the event going on right now, is its speed, oddly enough, and that is because it's actually the fastest tier 6 medium in the entire game with 64 km/h forward speed and 20 in reverse, which is second for tier 6 mediums. So yeah, very fast tank. And of course, couple that with the fact that it's got that 13 degrees of gun depression, and this thing can really be a nuisance, especially if you get it onto some of those ridges and try to use that little bit of troll armor that I mentioned earlier, and really just use your mobility and everything together to make a fantastic game. But anyway, let's move away from the stats now and look at how to actually play the tank. So in this game, I was on Oasis Palms. So an interesting thing about this map is it doesn't always necessarily require you to have an insane amount of gun depression, but because it is a map with dunes on it, the gun depression definitely comes in handy. And of course, other maps might have some steeper hills that you can use, but you can see right there, that is a ton of gun depression. I have no issue whatsoever looking down at the enemy there, even though that is a ridge that, say, maybe 8 degrees of gun depression might struggle on a little bit, but this thing has no problem at all. It's super easy, and for the most part, you can get it down over most reasonable ridges. Now, of course, this is a medium, so you still need to play it like one. You can't just go in a hold down position and pretend like you're a heavy, because that just doesn't work. So I am trying to be helpful, spotting my team. Of course, I'm not trying to push too early in the game. You can see that the enemy is definitely pushing on us, and most of my team has decided to go into the city, so I'm still playing this fairly carefully. You can see there is that KV2. Technically speaking, he could HE me in the face right there, so I'm not trying to poke out too often. I'm definitely taking a few risks getting off some shots, but you can see I'm doing it when the KV2 is not necessarily paying attention to me. And really, I'm actually focusing on that Juno over there more than the KV2, and the reason is that the Juno actually has a lower alpha, so I can more reliably hit him without getting slapped by the KV2. Because yeah, an HE on this tank is not fun, and I have actually felt it. In ISU, I think an SU-152 hit me. Yeah, it is not fun, and you definitely do need to be careful. So I'm trying to support my high score right here. I do get a shot off onto the VK, and here is the pivotal part in the game. I don't stick around. The thing with this tank is you have that mobility. You really got to use it to get out of some of these sticky situations like you see me do there. I quickly come around to use this rock here, so that even though I do have the KV2 right in front of me, I at least don't have his teammates trying to hit me from the side because I have the cover of that rock. So I'm quickly coming over to this second rock, hopefully to kind of bait the KV2 around it, because of course, even if he does shoot me with HE, I'm definitely going to have the upper hand when it comes to the gun. And of course, he is slow, so I'm able to get that quick snapshot onto him. Again, very important, just pulling behind rocks when you're not exposed, when you are exposed or when you're reloading. Very important. Save those hit points. Don't go around the rock like crazy. I'm still backing up every time, even though I do have the support of my team, just because there's really no reason for me to throw away my tank at this point, so I really do need to play carefully. Now, of course, it's time for the push on the VKH, and we do manage to clear him out, and that leaves us with 2 enemies on the enemy team. One of them's an SU, who's a one-shot. For me personally, when I was playing this game, I was going right for the SU-100Y just because I wanted to clear him. But of course, my teammate thankfully takes him out, so that I can then focus on this enemy Cromwell over here. And he's sitting in a fairly poor position. However, he is in a position that I'm able to shoot him, whereas my team isn't really able to. Again, you can see he's trying to do his best to use the rock. However, yeah, the accuracy on my tank ends up working in my favor, and he's really just in a very difficult position. And you can see in the very end there, that shot was absolutely nuts. I was a little bit surprised I hit it, but that did allow us to get a very nice 2,500 damage game, which ended up being a class 1. Right now, Personally, this tank is just very, very nuts because of the event. Pretty much everyone is spamming this tank, so it's actually really hard to get decent games in it, just because everyone's doing it, and basically everything's hold down and it's just really nuts. But anyway, that is the Cromwell B. Very, very solid game. Personally speaking, I think I would actually prefer the Panzer IV over this tank, but still, Cromwell B, definitely like it, and it's still a very fun tank, and for free right now in the event, definitely a good one to grab. But anyway, there you go, that is the Cromwell B. Hope you all enjoyed, and as always, have fun, good luck, and happy tanking.